Okay, good morning and welcome to my presentation this morning. I'm not sure who's in the room. You can actually start sending me comments. I'd like this to be interactive so that we can have a dialogue instead of just me presenting. But my name is Sonia Alleyne. I'm a communications and career strategist. I'm the author of I Kick Ass at Work, and it's the first strategy journal for career professionals. The reason I created this journal is because I wanted us to take more, or people who use the journal, I wanted them to take more charge of their life, more charge of their career. And I've always believed that we have way more power than we are willing to be responsible for. And so that's what this discussion is going to be about today, how you can, despite the environment, which is whether it's a national environment, a municipal environment, your work environment, your home environment, how you can take charge of your career and pursue the life and the goals that you want. And so I'm titling this Mindset is Everything. And I'm really strong about that. The starting point for creating successful strategies for advancing your career. Because I really believe that mindset is the most important piece of where you're going to be going. Mindset is the driver of success. I've interviewed many people over the years, corporate celebrities, general celebrities, and the one thing that they have in common, I've been asked this many times, what do all of these amazing, successful people have in common? And it is their mindset. Even if they weren't sure about what they were going to do, they were sure that they were going to do something big, or that they were going to make some change, or they were going to be able to change their life circumstances. And so why mindset is important is because it is the driver of success. And what I'd like you to understand today is that the strongest influence of mindset is the environment. Right. So it's usually what's happening to you. It's the places where you are. It can change your mindset. And when I talk about mindset, it's not just positive thinking, right? It's not just saying, oh, I'm going to stay positive, because you can wake up in the morning and decide that you're going to be positive, and then you spill your coffee on your suit, or you run into the coworker who doesn't speak to you, right? And then you shift everything. And so mindset really is, it's called metacognition, which is it's a new burgeoning study. It's the study of thinking about what you're thinking. Right. So it's really being cognizant of how you view your environment, how you think about yourself, so that you can make the changes, so that you can move forward. And so when you look at this, when I talk about how the environment is the driver for your mindset, when we look at our current environment, right, all over the world, we're being affected by the pandemic, and the pandemic has affected us not just socially, but it's affected us economically. So we're in this period of unrest, uncertainty, and fear of the future, right? And so all of those things are also going to impact how we think about ourselves, right? Those things are also going to be, because it's the pandemic has economic repercussions. It's going to impact the missions and the goals of how companies are going to execute. I should say it's going to impact how companies are going to execute on their mission and their goals, right? And then because we're in these environments, right, we're in these work environments, we're going to be impacted by the societal conditions as well. So that's going to impact how we interact with each other, how we respond, and how we coexist in a workplace. Again, because of the current environment, like, companies are streamlining, right? They're reassessing the brand in the marketplace. In some cases, particularly here in the United States, there have been layoffs, right? And so that's also, that will have global impact as well. And so environments, as a result, they can be competitive, right? They can be cutthroat, and they can be challenging. And so this is why the mindset is going to be important. And I have a question: how do you grow a mindset you can't see, that is not present in your environment? And so your mindset is how you think. And we're going to go through all of this, right? Your mindset is really about how you think about things. And when I say the environment impacts it, every part of how you exist in your environment is going to impact how you think about certain things. right? And we're going to go through this in the presentation. So the goal today is, and this is to your question, Mike, is we're going to change the way you see yourself and the environment, right? Change and expand it. And then we're going to provide strategies and tactical tools to successfully expand your professional opportunities in this environment. And so this is a favorite phrase of mine. It is by Wayne Dyer, who was a spiritualist who passed away several years ago. He says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's a really powerful mantra for me because I've been in some really challenging work environments, right? And I could have chosen to see them as really challenging and defeatist and see myself as a victim. Or if I was able to change my mindset, right? And we can talk about this later. Sometimes I decide to play a game and and see how I can win and see how I can look at the situation differently so I can approach it differently. It really changes the dynamics around me, right? So when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. It begins in the mind. And so when I worked at Black Enterprise, that was part of my history. I was the lifestyle and the careers editor for Black Enterprise. And one of the things that I got to do was just a lot of fun lifestyle things. And one of them was race car driving. I got to work and drive BMWs and Porsches and all of these fast cars. And we were all directed by race car instructors. And they all said the same thing. I thought it was interesting. That didn't matter what school I had gone to, they all had the same perspective. Look where you want to go, and your wheels will go in that direction. And it was an aha moment for me because what they explained is that why a lot of people crash into trees and poles is because even though they see this thing coming at them or they see that this is where the car is going, they said if they could have taken a moment and looked off and looked to the clear path, looked to the clear road where they wanted to see their car go, they probably could have steered in that direction. Right. And I thought, like, what a metaphor for life, right? Instead of focusing on all of the horrible things that are going on or all of the things that we see in front of us that are not working for us, why don't we direct our vision? Why don't we redirect our mind to the things that we want to see happen? And it takes you automatically in that direction. It just starts to shift things in that direction. And so, one of the things as a career professional that you're going to have to look at as you change your mindset is you have to be aware of where you are, right? You have to be aware of what you're contributing. So you have to look at how do I see myself, right? A lot of times we worry about how people are seeing us or how people are treating us without really looking at, well, how do I actually see myself in this environment, right? What are my skill sets? Like, what can I demonstrate as a skill and as a talent, right? Like, what do I have? And we all have skills and talents because even if you haven't started in the workforce yet, because you've gone to school and because you've learned some things, you've attained some skills and you have some natural talents, right? You might be a natural project manager. You might be a natural communicator. You might be a great writer, right? So you have some natural talents that you have to understand what they are before you can actually start to sell them in the marketplace, right? You also have to know what your goals are, right? What specifically would you like to achieve? And not that you just want to do well in your job, right? You should have really specific goals for yourself. What is it that you want to see yourself doing? And is there somebody already modeling that where you can say, you know what, I'd like to be this manager, or I'd like to be this VP, or I think I want to be the CEO. And even for some of you who are going to use your career to eventually transition into entrepreneurship, no, like I eventually want to be an entrepreneur. Like, so what am I going to want to know and understand about my skills and talents that will help me transition? Another really important piece is your network, right? How well connected am I? And am I nurturing important relationships? The good thing about technology now is that you can be connected across the globe. So you can be on a platform like LinkedIn, which is a professional platform, and connect with people across the globe about what is going on in their part of the world in the field that you are interested in. Right? So, how are you nurturing these relationships? So, it's not just about sitting on a platform, or it's not just about knowing who the VP is. How are you nurturing the relationship? And are you working with a mentor? Like, that's really important. I'm going to make some athletic references later on. And all of the great successful people are coached, whether you want to call it a coach, an advisor, or a mentor, whether they are presidents of countries, whether they are heads of football teams, like they are all coached. Successful people are coached. And so you should have a mentor, someone that you can bounce things off of, someone that you can share ideas with, and someone who's going to be answering to you, or responding to you and telling you what you do, right? And really being honest and not being afraid that your feelings are going to get hurt. In the States, we have a term called sponsor. And are you positioning yourself to have a sponsor? And so for those of you who want to grow in the corporate arena, it's really having someone in a position, in a higher position, who recognizes you, who sees what you do, right? And your brand. Like, there's a lot of conversation around brands. And what I always say is that everyone has a brand, whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not. Everybody has a brand. So a brand can be something as simple as you show up to work early every day, right? Because sometimes you say, well, I'm new in the workforce, or I don't have a lot of skills. I haven't demonstrated a lot of things. How can I show up differently? Well, you can show up by just being early to work every day. You've identified yourself in a particular category. You've created a brand for yourself. You can make sure that you are either on time with assignments or ahead of assignments, right? That is because when somebody is talking about you, that is your brand. Right. So someone can say, you know what, Sonia is always here early. There's a crisis going on in the office. You know what? Let me go see where she is. I know she's going to be here. Right. Your brand can work against you, right? If you're late all the time, right? If you're late on assignments all the time, if something major is happening, then someone might say, you know what, Sonia's always late on assignments. I don't know if I want to trust her with this. I don't know if I can rely on her with this. And so these are the things, when I talk about your environment, these are the things that you can control. So one of the things that, if when we're looking back at the organizations in terms of how you can move your career and move your positions, is two really important things. You have to understand the mission, goals, and culture of the organization so that you know what success looks like. And back from another question, how does one find a perfect mentor? And that's an excellent question, because a mentor, number one, doesn't have to look like you, doesn't have to come from the same community that you come from. They may not even necessarily, although I believe that it's good to have a mentor in the organization. Um, and I think it's important to have one in the organization and mentors out of the organization. You don't have to have just one. You can have a couple of mentors. And so finding the perfect mentor is finding the person who understands what you need to accomplish. So that's why those other bullet points were important, that you understand what your skills and your talents are, that you have a goal. Because when you have your goal and you have decided that these are some of the things, or this is the direction I want to move in, then you can identify a person who's either done it, or has access to certain positions, or is in an environment, right? So mentors understand the culture of your organization. When you choose a mentor internally, they understand the culture of the organization. And sometimes people fail or do poorly in a job, not because they don't know what to do, but they just didn't understand the culture. They didn't understand, like, this is how things do. And how I explain culture in terms of sports, it's like, if you think of any of the sports, right? Usually they involve a ball, they involve a goal of getting the ball from one area to the next. There may be a team, and there may be opposing teams, where sometimes there's just two opponents. But there's always a court or a field and a ball, right? So that's general. Like you could say that about business. But the rules of engagement for each of those sports, whether it's tennis or basketball or football or soccer, they're all different, right? And so understanding the culture is making sure that you don't gear up for soccer and walk onto a baseball field, right? Although all the elements are still there, it's a different culture. And so mentors help you define the culture of your organization. And so that's how you want to think about your company. Yes, it's a job, you have a position, you have a boss, you have a manager, they have products and services that they are selling, but there's a process for how they do those things. And so you want to understand, like, what's the culture here? Is sales really important in this organization? Is the financing really important for this organization? Is communications important for this organization? You have to understand what is the driving factor, and mentors help you understand those things. And then secondly, you want to be able to match your skills with the needs of the organization, right? Because it's, again, if you look at a sport, right? I have to have a certain talent to drive the team home, to be able to make the team successful. And so it's really important for you to, number one, understand the mission, the goals, and the culture of your organization, and then figure out your path for how you are going to match your skills that are going to be needed in the organization. And some you may have already, and some you may have to enhance or you may have to figure out. And so one of the things that I talk about is that you have to keep assessing, right? Just keep assessing. So sometimes when we graduate or sometimes when we get a promotion, we just feel really good, right? And we're just like, I made it. But if you treat yourself like a business, and I have another slide where I drive this point home again. If you think about yourself as a business, you want to know like where you are on your goals, right? And how effective you are in your current position and what you can be doing better. And so it's one of the reasons that I created this journal. And whether you buy my journal or you just keep a notebook, it's really important for you to document what's going on in the work environment so you can see your progress, so you can see how well you're going, and so that you understand it. And so that even if somebody were to come to you, your manager, your boss, your supervisor, and say X, Y, and Z, you have a record of what you've been doing and how you've been doing it. And so you can take more responsibility. You can even push back a little and say, I understand that you feel X, Y, and Z, but I did perform these tasks. And so how did these tasks fare in terms of the goals and what we expect for a success in this company or in this department? So your basic market skills, right, are effective communication and presentation skills, right? Because if you are in a work environment, you have to be able to present. You have to be able to articulate. You have to be able to communicate, whether it's a problem, whether it's a solution, whether you're advocating for yourself, right? Or whether you want to present yourself in a certain light. That's going to be important in terms of what's going to be important is how you communicate and how you present. And that's where, again, a mentor can help you because they can say, in this organization, this is what strong communications and presentation looks like. This is why it's important for you to have a mentor. Analytical thinking and problem solving. We're in a environment right now, a world where things are moving really quickly. Technology is moving us faster sometimes than we can even catch our breath. And so organizations need people who can look at data, look at situations, look at what's going on and understand what that is and problem solve, right? Because that's what organizations do really every day. That's what the highest executives in an organization do. They problem solve. And the more people on their team that they can rely on to help them either recognize a problem, but more importantly, solve it, you become more valuable. right? So how do you do that? Like, it's important for you to know what's going on in your organization, but also know what's going on in your industry. And because, again, technology gives us access to so much information, you should be knowing what's going on globally, where you can make recommendations about, like, I read this article, I saw this, or maybe we can try this. But you have to be engaged, right? Strategic visioning is also a result of your analytic thinking, because you're going to be able to see, like, you have to be able to see beyond where you are today, right? So this is where we are, but based on what we're doing, where's that going to take us, and how is that going to impact my organization or my manager, right? Like, how is that going to impact where we are? So you have to think way beyond where you are in the current moment, and you have to execute. At the end of the day, you can't be the person just coming up with great ideas. You can't be the person just pointing to problems, right? You have to be able to execute, because if you come up with a great idea and you're not able to see it through, then you really can't add considerable value for your organization. So executing is a really important basic market skill to be able to have. And so now we're going to go into the strategic and tactical tools that you can use to manage your environment and to think differently about it. So this is an important slide, and this is why I lead with it, um, because we're in trying times, and because environments can be competitive, we can be overwrought with emotions. And managing your emotions is okay. Another question. How does one improve on executing in a space where there is little room for mistake? Wow. So that's an excellent question. That's where understanding what's going on in your environment reduces the opportunity for you to make mistakes. So the goal is not to execute, not just to do something to be seen, right? The goal is to be able to look at the information, know enough about your environment, right? Know enough about who you're servicing, right? Who your clients are. And when I say your clients, I mean the clients of the business. Knowing enough who they are, and then and in some cases it might be a risk, but you're making an educated risk, right? And it's something that you can talk out, right, with your mentor, with your supervisor. You can say, look, like, this is what I've looked at, this is what we know, right? These are the facts, this is the data, and based on the facts and the data, this is what I surmise. What are your thoughts about that? Right? And it might be something that your manager had already thought about. It may not be, it may be something that she hadn't thought about, or he hadn't thought about, but it's an opportunity for you to execute, right? So if you're in the medical field, right, you're not going to try a new medical procedure that is going to, you're not going to go into an operating room and say, they said we're going to take the appendix out, but I don't think it's the appendix. I think it's something else, right? That's not a risk that you can take. But it can be something where, you know what, we've been operating like this, and I found a way to make this more efficient, right? Like, if we add this to the process, or if we remove this to the process, whatever we're trying to execute, we can get it done faster, we can get it done quicker, right? And so finding that model or finding that opportunity is what you get to do, right? But you have to be engaged, and that's going to be another one of the slides that I have. You have to be engaged to be able to do that, right? So I want to talk about your emotions, right? And I'm going to go through these quickly so we can get into to more questions. We've got 30 minutes left. You want to be responsive. You want to be responsive and proactive, and not reactive, right? I'm gonna go through these pretty quickly. And this, again, is being in control of your mind and your emotions, right? If there's a situation coming up, you don't want to react to the situation, right? You don't want to just get angry at the situation. You want to respond to the situation, right? And you want to be proactive, right? You don't ever just want to fly off and sulk, right? Or yell or scream or argue. You always, because at the end of the day, your role in the job is to be able to perform, right? And so you always want to look at a problem and go, all right, how could we do this differently? What can we do here? Right? Or I see this thing happening. I could be upset, but there's a way that I can get in front of it. Right? Let me do that. You want to be compelling and not compulsive. Right? So um, you want to be dynamic in the workplace. You don't want to, again, to this point, you don't want to just be compulsive, right? You don't want to be reactive. You want to attack the problem and not the person, right? We work with a lot of people in the environment. We have, I know I've worked for a lot of years, and there are people that you don't like. There are people who annoy you. There are people who get on your nerves, right? There are people that you feel are judging you. There are people in the environment that you think want to see you fail, right? If you can focus on the problem at hand and not the person, again, you increase your opportunities for success and you manage the situation that much better. One of my favorites is think creatively and not competitively. When you think competitively, you're always thinking about besting the next person or getting ahead of the next person. And if you can look at the problem and you can look at your environment in a creative way and keep thinking about, like, how best can I do this? How best can I improve my situation? Then you can come up with some really great solutions, right? There's a lot of talk about thinking outside of the box. When you think creatively, there is no box, right? Because you're not comparing yourself to anyone else. In situations where the problem is the person, what do you do? And this is where the mindset comes in again, right? Because at the end of the day, what is it that needs to get accomplished? There are people that are horrible in the workplace. Again, there are people who compete against you. There are people who want to see you fail. But and I have quite a few mentees, I tell them to go into the situation and see it differently. Like, and I know this sounds, um, it may sound soft, right? But I'm going to ask you to just practice this and try it. If you focus on the problem, if you focus on what needs to be addressed, and you decide that I'm not going to take on all of the emotional stuff that this person gives me. If the person, I used to say, there were people who never said good morning, right? And I would go in and say good morning every single day, right? I wasn't going to let somebody else's behavior affect mine. And it changes the power dynamic, right? It really changes the power dynamic when you can say, I'm not going to let your behavior affect me. If it's a manager, right? You can literally have conversations with the manager, and this is when you need to document everything and say, this is how I did X, Y, and Z. I'd like you to please tell me what you felt about this, right? And explain how you feel about a certain situation. You can take your managers to task very respectfully by just asking them questions. And when they say they don't like something or they didn't like something, please explain to me what it is that you would have liked to have seen, right? You can really talk these things through when you're not emotional. When you decide that you're going to be responsive, it works. And I'm not saying that it's easy, and I'm not saying that it's going to be a walk in the park. It's not. But it's also an opportunity for you to say, right? Because you have as much choice, and this is why I call this the power of choice, as your manager. Is this the best place for me to be? Right? So I think if there's a lot of pushback, if there's a lot of craziness, it's an opportunity for you to say to yourself, because you are in control of your career, is this the best place for me to be? And a lot of us feel that we have no choice, right? Like, I need this job, and so I have to stay here. I have to put up with this. Um, but if you're networking, if you're expanding your networking, if you're continually talking to people about this business, if you're talking to your mentor and getting guidance, you may not have to stay in a bad situation. Or you can get the advice from your mentor in terms of how to change it. I hope that's helpful. Um, you have to have a keen understanding of the culture. Like, I can't impress upon you enough how important this is. You have to know what success looks like in your organization. And that's where your mentors will help you. You know, a lot of times we look online, and the company website will say, you know, this is how we do business. Well, you know, that's their marketing and branding. But then there's the way of how they execute things, how they feel about certain departments, how they feel about the execution of tasks. That's what you really have to understand, because that's what's going to help you effectively solve problems. It's going to help the organization drive innovation. So you're going to be able to come up with different ideas. And the goal, right, that you're in this workshop is that you want to become a leader, right? And so when you understand the culture of your organization, it helps you be a better leader. It helps you be more empathetic because you understand what your colleagues and what your team members are going through, and you understand how to lead them through whatever, whether it's crisis or whether it's great times as well. You have to be engaged, right? And this goes back to, you know, how do you improve on executing in a space where there's little room for mistakes? You have to be engaged. Like, you have to know what's going on in the environment, internally and externally. You have to know what's going on in your industry, right? Like, you shouldn't just be working in a vacuum or working in a silo, right? Which happens a lot for organizations. We just tend to be siloed. You have to, I used to make it my business. I would always go and see what was going on in the next department. So although I worked in publications, I would talk to the folks in advertising, right? And even though that was kind of taboo back in the day, because we had to maintain church and state, I always talked to advertising just to understand, like, what are you selling? How are you selling? What is that important? When we moved into the digital space, I would go and talk to the digital people. I got involved in events. So I was never just the editorial person. And so that's what helped me expand my career, because I was always engaged and I wanted to know. I liked my company. I wanted to know what was going on. I wanted to figure out how we could better serve our audience. I wanted to know how we could do that. So if you can remain curious about your organization, you can remain engaged. Work with your mentors and advisors. We said that already. And so I won't, unless you have additional questions on that, I won't spend any more time on that. You also have to be visible, right? So a lot of times we just want to do our job, right? And and that's it, right? Because we've been trained, most of us, is that if you work hard, right, you will be rewarded. And in many corporations, it's not just about working hard. You really have to be seen, right? So people have to see the work that you're doing. They have to experience you as a professional, right? So they can feel your brand. They can feel confident about you. They can like your personality, because at the end of the day, we hire people we like. We work with people that we like. And yes, we want them to be talented and skilled, but if you're going to be on my team, I have to have a sense of who you are, right? And so you have to be visible. You can't just work in a silo. You have to be able to create opportunities for people to see the work that you're doing. You have to feel comfortable about talking about the work that you do as well, right? Stay in touch with those in your network and look for ways to expand it. And that's why I brought up LinkedIn, because it is a social media platform other than some of the other ones. It's a professional platform. So we spend a lot of times on social media talking about, you know, where we traveled for vacation, what we did with our families, how fabulous we look in our outfits, where we're eating, and all the cool places that we visited. If we spent a little bit more time, right, on a professional platform, like developing our profiles online. How many of you have strong professional profiles online, where if I were to go look you up, I could say, wow, like this is a dynamic individual. This person is somebody that I'd like to connect with. Or a recruiter, right, could be looking at it and saying, wow, like this person is perfect for our team. So you can do that. You can network professionally on a platform like LinkedIn. And so you should consider doing that, but also offer the platform, right? You can take certain people to lunch, right? You can go to certain events and network, right? You have to you can go to an event, read up on the person who's going to be there, and then make an introduction and said, you know what, I've read some studies that you did, or I read about the work that you've done, and I'm really impressed by, you know, how you managed X, Y, and Z. People love flattery. And so if you were to meet someone who you are impressed by because you read up on them, and then you could tell them about how dynamic you think they are, you've made a connection. because they recognize that you've taken the time to do that. Engage regularly on specifics with your managers, right? So never just take from your manager, good job, Sonia, right? You really need to say, I'm glad you like that. What did I do really well? And where do you think I could have improved myself? Right? Because that again gives you the responsibility. Sometimes when somebody says good job, you're just really happy that you did a good job and you're patting yourself on the back, you made your manager happy and you're off. Right? You really want to get specifics because managers are human. They might just say, you know what, I need to tell this person that they did a good job. They made a couple of mistakes, but I don't want to say anything. They already feel I'm already picking on them. We're dealing with humans. And so you want to be regularly specific with your manager. And so not almost everything, but major things that are being accomplished, particularly if they're being recognized up the chain, right, by higher ups, you want to be able to say, all right, I'm glad you like that. I'm excited as well. What could I have done better? Constantly assess and reassess. I said that before. This is what businesses do. Businesses who are successful businesses, whether it's Nike or Starbucks or any of the major global brands, they don't sit there and go, wow, we sold 300,000 sneakers this year. That's good. They don't sit back and say, oh, this is great. They look at what they've done and say, wow, this was really good. What could we do to sell 300,000 more? And let's reassess that at the end of the quarter, right? You need to do that with your career as well. You need to be constantly looking at, yes, I'm a great project manager, right? And I've been able to get this team up and running. But you know what? Are there different tools that I could be using? Could I be doing this another way? Is there a course that I could be taking? Are organizations implementing things differently? Like these are the responsibilities that you have to be able to do, right? This is you taking responsibility. Track and document your successes. And this is another reason why I created I Kick Ass at Work. And so again, you don't have to buy my book, but you should have a notebook where you are tracking and documenting all of your successes, right? Because the further you get away from a success, the less detail you remember it. And when do we update our LinkedIn profiles and our resumes? Usually twice or two different times, I should say. Usually when you're frustrated about work, right? And you're like, I got to get out of here. And you're going to start looking for jobs and you're going to put together your resume, or you run into someone and say, hey, I got an opportunity for you. Send me your resume. And then you're up all night trying to remember what you did so that you can figure out your what you've done. So that you don't want to do, right? So you want to document your success as it happens all the time and the details of the success. If there was money, if you increased revenue, you want to put that percentage down. If it was a bigger percentage than the year before or the quarter before, you want to put those things down. We have 15 minutes left. So one of the things in terms of training your mindset, I always say, think and train like an athlete. Right? Athlete, I feel like it's the best metaphor. And if you can keep some of these things in your mind, I think that you will do well. Right? Athletes are clear about what's expected. Right? They're clear about what it is. If I've got it, and their individual role, they're clear about that. So even if they're with a team, they're also clear about the value that they have. When I think about basketball, if you're a forward or if you're a guard, right, they understand that, yes, I'm operating within a team, but this is my skill set. This is what I do really well. This is what I bring to the team. They also know what they have to do to win, right? And there are no excuses, right? They're not saying, nobody says, well, we almost won, right? Like they win or they lose. They understand that there's no kind of like wavering. And so you've got to be that clear too, right? Like, what does it take to win, right? And that's what I want to focus on. I don't just want to sit here and exist, right? A lot of people just sit and exist in jobs. They just, I like to say they just, they're putting the sprinkles on the donuts. Like, you don't have to think about it. You just, donut comes through, it needs sprinkles and you pop them on. Like, you need to be more engaged. What do I have to do to win? Right? And then they're always pushing the limits of their capabilities. So even when they win a World Series, even when they break a record, The goal is to break that record again next year. Then they don't sit back and go, yeah, like I'm the world's fastest X, Y, and Z. I'm good, right? They keep going back. Some of them to their detriment, right? They keep going back to see how they can do that, and that's what you need to do. Like I said, technology is changing at such a fast speed. You always have to be on. What could I do differently? How am I doing it differently? Do I need to go back to school? Do I need to get certified? Like always be in the game, right? Adversity and challenges are motivators. If you work long enough, you are going to make mistakes, right? You're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to make the a wrong adjustment on something. You're going to you make a wrong prediction, a wrong estimate. Like that's just the nature of living, right? It's not even working. That's the nature of living. Like you're going to make mistakes. You're going to be hit with adversity, right? They're going to want to streamline your organization, or they're going to reduce your hours, or you might get laid off, or but adversity and challenges for athletes are motivators, right? That's when you get back in and you train even harder, right? You don't accept defeat. Again, I said this before, there's no ambiguity in results. And corporations are huge with that. Like you won or you lost, right? Like you can't come in with excuses, right? Don't try and figure out what the excuses is. Um, oh, great question. How do I handle mental exhaustion and burnout? Um, I'm so glad you asked that question because I talk about this all the time as well. You have to take your breaks. You have to take your breaks. Um, you can't, you're going to work hard, right? Because it's the nature of the environment that we're in. But you have to be able to take your breaks. And so I would tell people, so it's really interesting in American culture. Like we'll have, you may get 4 weeks or 2 weeks vacation. People don't take their vacation, right? They don't take their vacation. Um, they don't take their lunch hour. If they get a lunch hour, they'd rather eat lunch at their desk. And what I would say to you is those, and now many of us are working from home. I don't know what the situation is for homework for a lot of people who may be watching this, but you have to take time out. Like you have to take your sleep, right? Decide that you're going to go to bed at a certain time. You have to do things like you have to work out. Like that's the other thing that athletes do. They train. They're always training. They're always improving. But this is the slide for that person about exhaustion and burn. They bring their whole selves to the game, right? So they train physically for performance, but they train mentally for the win. And training mentally also means that you have to take your breaks. So you have to eat well, right? Like you can't just grab stuff on the go. And if you're in an environment that's like that, my advice to people is that you have to reevaluate the trade-off. Like this is because, like again, the reason I wrote this book was to say that the environment doesn't control you. You're in control. And we've allowed the environment and society to control everything in terms of how we show up. And if there was a blessing for the pandemic, I think what we've learned is that it is important for us to reevaluate like what's important in life. And your health is the most important thing, right? And it's not just your physical health, it's your mental health. And that's why it's so important that you cannot let the environment control how you feel about yourself, what you think your opportunities are, and how you function in the workplace. And so, with 10 minutes left, if you have any additional questions, yeah, I'm glad that last question from Jason came up, um, because that is also what you have control of, right? You can decide to go to bed at a certain hour. You have to drink more water, right? You have to eat foods that are going to nourish your body. You have to eat none of this processed stuff and fast foods, and those things just create more challenges in your body because you're already dealing with stress. You need to work out. If you can meditate, and if meditation feels stressful for you, just sit and breathe, right? If you can just sit for 10 minutes and just do deep breaths to calm yourself down, those are the things that you're going to have to do. The competitiveness of our world is not going to slow down. What's going to change is that we are going to make choices that are going to benefit ourselves. And I think that's what we're going to have to um, realize. Failure is not defeat, right? And so if you have to walk away from something, it's okay, right? If you've lost something, it's okay. It doesn't mean it's defeat. I always feel that the universe is always speaking to you, right? And so when certain things come up, it's a chance for us to reevaluate. It goes back to let's be responsive and not reactive. Sometimes when things are thrown at us, we throw our hands up, right? Instead of saying like, does this serve me? Those are legitimate questions to ask. Does this serve me? Is this the environment I want to be in? Is this how I want to continue um, to to move forward? Someone just asked me, what would I tell my 25-year-old self? Wow, like I would say that, and we say this enough, right? Like that you are enough. Like there are things that I did. I overperformed, right? I overperformed and didn't advocate for myself, right? I didn't ask for, and so what I would tell my 25-year-old self is that you deserve to ask for what you're worth, right? You deserve to get paid what you're worth. I always felt like if I just worked really hard, and I did this for a long time, long after I was 25. I would just work really hard and hope that everybody would notice me, right? And then so I would get the positions that I wanted and I would get the salary that I wanted, and that didn't happen, right? Because if you're not advocating for yourself, there are very few people who are going to advocate for you. Every once in a while, you'll see somebody will be like, "Oh, this person is really talented, and I want to bring them along, and I want to help them along, right? I want to help nurture them." And that's really fortunate for those of us that it happens to. But for the most part, if you don't advocate for yourself in this business, in this life, because you're not your career really. And if I could, if I hope you can hear this, right? I we were raised, at least my generation, work was important because this is how you took care of yourself, right? And it was how you made your family proud as well, right? Because you had to go to school and our parents sacrificed for you to do all of these different things. But your career is really how you're going to make your mark in this world, right? If you believe that we're all here to contribute to society, then why are you here? I really feel like that's our goal, to figure out really early in life, like, why was I put here? What is going to be my contribution in this life? And so I'm going to learn a lot of things on this journey, and I'm going to learn a lot of things in my environment. And the goal, right, is to live a comfortable life and to make the money that we want. But you want to not worry about money so that you can focus on your passion and you can make the change that you were brought here to make. And I really believe that that's why it's so important for you to take responsibility, because it's easy for you to lay back and feel that you're being dictated and moved, and things are being decided on for you. But you really do have the power. You have way more power than you give yourself credit for. You probably have make more credit, more power than you're willing to take accountability for. And I want you to be able to focus on that. How do you choose whom to mentor? Um, it depends, honestly. I kind of did a lot of mentoring by default. I have folks who will reach out and ask, and I almost never say no. So which is that those are my own issues that I have to work on. But yeah, like I feel like this is my purpose here, to help people understand. I struggled a lot in my career. I struggled a lot. And so for me to be an author of 2 books on career development is it's all the stuff that I've learned from a lot of the mistakes that I made, and from watching people who did it really, really, really well. And so, yeah, my goal here is to make sure that people make less mistakes than I did, and at the end of the day, that they feel fulfilled in their career. Because if you don't feel fulfilled, then what are you doing it for? What are you doing it for? So I have 5 minutes left. If you have any additional questions, pop them into the chat and I can ask them. Let's all connect on LinkedIn. If you say that you were part of this this training, this workshop, I will, let's connect and let's see how we can help each other. And what do you do if you feel like you haven't found your purpose yet? Um, you just keep exploring, right? So a lot of people feel like they haven't um, found their purpose. And that's why it's important to explore, right? Explore everything, right? So I believe that the universe, God, helps you do that, right? When you're open, right? And so when I say you're open, opportunities are going to come to you and they're going to feel right, right? So this is all about like getting in touch with like your instinct. I always tell people I've interviewed so many people over the years, famous people, business heads of organizations, and I've never interviewed anyone who said, "Boy, I listened to my instinct and that was so wrong." Right? You have to be guided by your instinct. And so things are going to come up for you and they're going to feel right, but they're not going to seem right. Right. And so I always say, go with your instinct, go with your gut, go with how you're feeling, and you will be led to your purpose. Because even if you're resisting it, you'll notice that the same things keep coming up over and over and over and over and over again. And so I wish you all, I've got like 2 minutes left. I wish you all great success. I hope that this was helpful for you. I hope that there were some takeaways. And let's reconnect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. If you have any questions, you can drop them into a message on my LinkedIn profile. It may take me a couple of days, but I will get back to you. Thank you for being here. Wish I could see you all, and much success. See you at the top.